Hello and welcome to Crafty Learns Spanish. Today we're going to look at the present tense. And excuse the sound in the background if you hear anything. I have the air conditioning on. It's very hot. And so I don't want to suffer. Sorry about that. So we're going to talk about the present tense. We've been looking at this all since the beginning. And there's a reason why we've just been concentrating on the present tense, because usually for one thing you do it anyway when you're learning your language. And the second thing, in Spanish, it's used a lot. I haven't introduced any other tenses yet because with the present tense you get sort of a lot in one. And how to explain that better is just by showing you, I think. So when we talk about the present tense, for example, let's say this boy, and that means, for example, in this case, I'm going. Okay, or for example, it can mean well, let's start with the most original. I go, boy, I go, and that's more of a descriptive form. For example, you could say voy a la oficina, I go to the office. Voy a la oficina, I go to the office every day, and that's descriptive. So it's the same in English. Okay, now another thing you can do is to say what you're doing now, like what I've just written before. Not I9, I'm going. Okay, so you can say, if you say voy a la oficina or voy a la oficina, it's really difficult to go back from one language to another. You tend to mix the things sometimes. Watch out for it, it's quite funny. You get some nice interesting sounds. So voy a la oficina means at this moment. So if someone asks you what are you doing, you'll say voy a la oficina. Doesn't mean I go to the office every day. It means I'm going to the office. Okay. So you've got like a what are you doing now as well. So you have a sort of a second use for it, and it's quite good. For example, although I'm using this, for example, if someone says me, ¿qué haces? And we forget the accent, of course. I hate accents. But they're necessary. I understand. ¿Qué haces? It can be what do you do, as we say in English. What do you do? ¿Y tú qué haces? I don't know, I'm a brickie. Whatever it is. Okay? But it can mean in the moment, if somebody's not over your shoulder, what are you doing? Okay, so what are you doing? So it's a bit like a future tense. Okay, present tense in the present, exactly present moment, sorry, and a descriptive thing. Now, like I say, the context tells you everything, because someone asks you ¿qué haces? You're sitting at a desk and someone's pointing at what you're doing and they say ¿qué haces? It's obviously they're not asking you about your job, right? So this is what you have to take away from the context. If somebody meets you for the first time and says ¿qué haces?, it's not what you're doing now, because you say, yeah, well, I'm talking to you. No, obviously not that. It means what's your job? I mean, they have another way of asking as well. You know, like we would say, what is your profession? They say ¿a qué te dedicas? ¿A qué te dedicas? But don't worry about that. We'll look at that later. But they also can say ¿qué haces? What do you do? Okay, and so you've got a present tense, a descriptive, and obviously what you're doing now. Where in English we would have to put, we couldn't say what do you do. What do you do? We have to say what are you doing. You know, but in Spanish you can say what do you do. So you've got this extra bonus, all right, of saying in the moment. You can emphasize it by doing the equivalent of what are you doing, which we'll look at some other time. But this is what I want to use as the present tense. You know, ¿qué haces is, hey, ¿qué haces? ¿Qué comes, for example? What are you eating? ¿Qué comes? What are you eating? I don't, you know, you could say, what do you eat? ¿Qué comes, for example, in the morning? And in the morning, in Spanish, is por la mañana. ¿Qué comes por la mañana? Yeah. And that means more, obviously, by the context, what do you eat in the morning is more, well, you know, plátanos, bananas, for example, naranjas, oranges, I don't know, tostada, toast. It's all that, okay? So you can say it instead of, but if you're there and sitting and somebody, and you're eating, and someone says, ¿qué comes? You tell them, it's what are you eating? Okay. Now, for example, we can use it also for the kind of like the future in a sense, in the sense that we use the what do you, for example, if we say ¿qué haces mañana? All right. We're not, in English we would say what are you doing tomorrow? Okay, and that's a future tense. So you can use it for that in that sense. And the way that English uses the present continuous, the what are you doing tomorrow? So ¿qué haces mañana? Is more like what are you doing tomorrow, or what will you do is the future. What will you do tomorrow, or what are you doing tomorrow? If you don't know, you don't know. But this is how they use the present tense here. It's extremely useful, and it's so common that it needs its own little video. It's that special. So when we say the present tense, you're going to use it for a lot of things, which is why you have to learn the present tense very well. Okay, then when we get a bit further into it, we'll learn all the other tenses. Tenses, I mean by, sorry, if you don't know what tenses are, is like when you talk about the past or the future, or if there's something, you know, like would, there's a conditional, they say, if this is, what would you do if you were hungry, you know, things like that. There are different times that we call them in Spanish. Past, future, present, okay, and imaginary situations. But the present tense is the same, and it's the same in English. For sometimes in Spanish, they can use it as a past tense. Now this sounds strange, but if you think about it, we do it in English. For example, you tell somebody about your day yesterday, and you go, so I say to the bank manager, what are you doing? Now you're talking in the present tense, but it's the reported speech, it's called. So what are you doing? He says, and that's using the present tense, and it's the same in Spanish. Yeah. So, for example, in this example, it's a bit, I have to use a lot more Spanish. He would say, my boss said, ¿qué haces mañana? My boss said, and that's the only past thing. ¿Qué haces mañana? Porque I need something, algo. Algo is something in Spanish. Necesito algo. So you have this strange use of it, which is in perfectly legitimate, like English. It's more common in Spanish, I think. So a lot of this using the future, like in the actual present moment, and describing things is a lot. So ¿qué haces mañana? Or ¿qué haces? Let's say we just get rid of that. It can mean what do you do? What are you doing? And if we put the context, what are you doing, or what will you do in some specific occasion? So we have this present tense thing that we're going to use a lot. And since we've been learning the present tense and how to conjugate, you have to understand that you're not only learning the present tense, you're learning the present is in descriptive, the present is in what is happening, and the future, a type of future tense, which is what you're doing tomorrow, what are you doing next week, when will you go. For example, when will you go? You can say cuando, if you remember, cuando vas. Like saying when do you go, or when will you go? Cuando vas, when will you go, or when are you going? It's just the context is always more important. And to be honest, I think we'll have to do a thing about context, because I keep saying it, and until you have a context, you don't really know. So we'll have to find a way to bring context into it, which is a bit more useful for you. I think that is an important thing. So these are some of the things of the present tense. And now I haven't written much, but it's more talky. But it's to describe what you're doing. So when you look at all the past things we've been doing, so for example, let's have a look. Have we got any? We were looking at the thingy words, gender, vocabulary, regular verbs. So, for example, you could say hablar. And you can say I'm speaking to you. So, for example, to live, where are you living? Donde vives? Or ahora, for example, where you're living now is donde vives? Donde vives ahora? Yeah. Instead of saying something else, which you don't know yet, but so you get these extra things. This is the important thing. This is what I want to bring it to you. So remember that. So you've got the present descriptive, the present as in now, as in what are you doing. The present, the future is what will you be doing, or what are you doing, what will you do, and so you can say it quite a lot now already, and it's going to come together. And trust me, everything will always come together in the end. Because the beginning lessons, there's a lot of information, and I know it's overwhelming, but don't worry. It all clicks into place. It's like several pieces of a puzzle. And when you get all the puzzle together, then you see the picture. But you have to get the bits together one by one. Which reminds me, there's going to be a new sort of a series, which is going to be like spotlight different things. And so, for example, like where was it? When we talked about possessive adjectives, instead of breaking up what I'm going to use this video series for is just to continue to get you to talking. And I'm going to take things like this, where we teach how to be, or possessive adjectives, or irregular verbs, or subject pronouns. We're going to put them into a separate little series called the Spanish Spotlight, Crafty Spanish Spotlight. So it's like a reference material. And because I feel that this is getting broken up, because I have to explain the grammar, and I don't want to do that. I want to get you talking straight away. So we're going to begin to do that, and hopefully a couple of videos will come up in the spotlight, and you'll be seeing them soon. Okay then, well, so we'll leave it there. Have a good one, and we'll see you soon. Okay, toodaloo.